People often ask me what it was like when the Soviet Union fell apart. To be honest, we didn't realize it immediately. Officially, Ukraine became independent at the end of 1991, but all the dramatic events were happening in Moscow while we were busy flying airplanes. If you ask me when we really noticed something had changed, my answer is simple: when Borispil Airport ran out of fuel, or, to be technically correct, jet fuel, completely. One day, we were working ourselves to exhaustion, fulfilling flight schedules, and probably over-fulfilling a few Soviet standards as well. The next day, nothing. All flights canceled. No fuel, no airplanes, no work. I don't remember what the foreign airlines were doing at the time, but our airline simply stopped. People often ask me, "Did you fly for Ukraine International Airlines?" No, it didn't exist yet. Aerosvit also didn't exist. At that time, there was only one airline based at Borispil. Us, Ukraine Airlines, a state airline. Private airlines simply didn't exist yet. We weren't called International Airlines of Ukraine. We were simply an airline from Ukraine that happened to fly internationally. The giant Soviet system was like a huge aircraft with a lot of momentum. The engines had already failed, but the airplane was still moving forward. For a while. Then, the first warning lights started coming on. Banks began having problems. Fuel became harder to obtain. Money started losing value. And even uniforms disappeared. For a couple of years, we had already been flying without airline uniforms. Aeroflot was no longer our airline, but there wasn't enough money to create a new uniform. The currency situation was even more entertaining. At first, we were still paid in Soviet rubles. Then came coupons. Then coupon karbovanets. Even today, I'm not entirely sure how to explain coupon karbovanets to foreigners. To be honest, I'm not sure I can explain it to myself. Eventually, the Ukrainian hryvnia appeared. I probably wouldn't remember exactly when that happened, except that I still have a document from those years. A very funny document by today's standards, my old foreign currency booklet. I still have it, and it tells quite a story. For younger viewers, and especially for people outside the former Soviet Union, this may sound unbelievable. Today, if someone carries dollars in their pocket, nobody cares. Back then, under Soviet law, simply possessing foreign currency could lead to a very unpleasant conversation with the authorities. A criminal conversation. Currency operations were a criminal offense. That's why this booklet was treated almost like a security document. Every page was numbered. The pages were sewn together with thread. Everything was stamped and sealed. Special government departments controlled these records. Looking through it today is like watching inflation in slow motion. At first, I carried a few rubles, then more rubles, then a lot more rubles, then enormous amounts of rubles. No, I wasn't becoming richer. The money was becoming poorer. You can actually see it in the records. The numbers keep growing larger and larger. By 1996, according to these documents, I was carrying millions in my pocket. Sadly, I was not a millionaire. Those millions were worth very little. Then, finally, at the end of 1996, the hryvnia appeared. The first exchange rate was about 1.85 hryvnias to $1. What fascinates me most is that this little booklet recorded history in real time. The stamps changed, the custom seals changed, the Soviet symbols disappeared, the Ukrainian trident appeared, countries changed, governments changed, currencies changed, but the booklet survived, and every trip still had to be recorded. There was a section for domestic currency, a section for foreign currency, and all of it was carefully documented. There is another detail that younger people often find impossible to believe. Today, people worry about getting visas to enter foreign countries. Back then, for us, entering wasn't the biggest problem. Leaving was. The Soviet Union had very strict exit visas. In some cases, you were allowed permission for no more than 2 capitalist countries at the same time. That's right, capitalist countries. Today we call them democratic European countries. Back then they were officially called capitalist countries. Funny how vocabulary changes with history. Then one day something even stranger happened. I stopped going to work. Not because I resigned, not because I retired, because there was no work to go to. And not just me. All the pilots stopped. The airplanes were on the ground. The fuel was gone. The old system was disappearing. And nobody really knew what would happen next. In my next story, I'll tell you how that situation was finally resolved.